Hey there, folks. I'm Matt Hansen,
And I'm John Johnson.
and you're listening to Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, the podcast where we discuss favorites we've reread, comics we want to read, and everything in between.
And here's the comic we picked this week.
Hey there, everybody.
Hey, welcome back.
Yeah. Welcome back to another episode of
Planes, Trains, and Comic Books.
We're getting real good at that. We should be. It's about episode 11 now, so, should be about doing it perfect. But yeah, so this week we're doing, actually this whole month we're going to do, being in honor of Black History Month, we're going to do maybe some lesser known properties or characters or comics that are out there. Some of them actually are really well known. Like we're going to do a Batman character, or we're going to do a Batman story by Dwayne McDuffie, R.I.P., one of the greatest writers of all time. You all probably know him from Justice League Unlimited, all the animated series of Justice League,
all the best ones,
all the greatest shows of animated shows that you watched when you were a kid. His name appeared almost on every one. So he was fantastic. He also created the Milestone comics from back in the day, which were in the 90s. It was like an all black creative company that like was under DC. And so like it was like all black characters. We're going to do one of those, which was Static Shock. We're
going to do the best run of Static Shock too.
Yeah, apparently this is the best run, so we'll figure it out. But we're doing a bunch of other ones and a couple different things. So trying to mix it up, but keep it also honoring great creators that are of color. So the first one we're gonna do is by Kyle Baker, who's a wonderful animator or artist and writer. And normally he does kind of like all the stuff I've seen of him is kind of like not heavy and like fun kind of. He's got a really good kind of cartoony style. But he did one of the most like affecting. It's a book that affected me a lot when I read it the first time. I read this book in 2005 or 6. It was like right when I started getting back into comics.
Yeah.
Something like I was, like you hear about books like Mouse and other books like that, where it's like about the Holocaust or things, other things about Jews, maybe.
Just really sensitive and really like dark historical periods that they put into comic book form to kind of reach a broader audience.
Right. And one of the series that I saw, and I was like, oh, what's that? Is it was this book called Nat Turner. And I had known of Kyle Baker, and I was like, oh, cool. Like, he's a great creator. I'm sure this is a great book. And I picked it up and I read it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've never heard of this. This was amazing. Why do I not know about this? And so, yeah, it's kind of like, and I was telling John this before the podcast started, but it's like, I don't know if anybody's watched the Watchmen TV show that's out right now on HBO, but the first episode was talking about the Tulsa Black Wall Street massacre. I don't know what else you would call it, but it was like basically in Tulsa, Oklahoma in the 20s. It might have been in the teens. I think it was the 20s.
I think it was the 20s.
But there was an area of Tulsa that was full of like black wealth, and they called it Black Wall Street. And it was like all these, shop owners and businesses and everything. And apparently the KKK went in and destroyed all of it, burned it all down, everything. Yeah. And so, horrible story, horrible true event, which is something I never heard about. And I didn't realize, I was a history major in college and didn't hear any of this stuff. So I don't know, maybe I didn't get to those upper classes or whatnot before I switched majors, but I never heard about Nat Turner other than maybe I might have heard his name once, like mentioned somewhere, like in a history book.
And when he mentions like the same kind of thing, like I saw like a little tiny like 2-sentence blurb on him in this history book, and that's what I remember. I was like, I know the name Nat Turner.
Yeah. Why
is that important again?
Yeah.
And it's very much breezed over, unfortunately, in most of the books.
Yeah. And so Nat Turner's one of these, and even Kyle Baker said in one of his issues is like, or one of his essays about it was kind of like just brushed over. Like they mention it, but they don't mention it. Like they give you like he might have been important to something somewhere, like, but they don't give you all the details. They just say Nat Turner inspired Frederick Douglass, and Frederick Douglass was a great person who did this and this and this and this. And so basically this is like one of those stories that I guess apparently has been brushed under the history books for some reason, and Kyle Baker made an awesome graphic novel about it to hopefully shine a little light on the story. So in honor of that, we're going to shine some light on it too, and hopefully more people read this awesome book. And I believe it's still in print and everything. You can at least get it. I'm sure. Let's see. Is it on Amazon? Let me check Amazon. But I'm sure.
If it's on Comixology, it's probably on.
Oh yeah, it's definitely on Comixology digitally. So, yeah, I'm sure it's available at least digitally. It's digitally right now. So yeah, it's not in a hard copy, but I'm sure they'll do more printings of it, through the future. But yeah, so why don't we kind of dig into this? And before we dig into this, I guess trigger warning. This deals with very mature themes as far as there's killing, slavery, killing of women, children, a lot of heavy topics here. So I wouldn't give this book to anyone who's not under who's not in high school.
Yeah, this is definitely a high school up read. There's
yeah.
While the comic itself is all in black and white in this case.
Yeah, it's not graphic like that, but it's graphic in what it depicts.
Yeah, so. What its content is.
Yeah.
And I mean, and the fact that it's historically accurate is,
yeah,
I mean,
even more so graphic.
Yeah.
If you put yourself in the context of everything going on here, you're like, oh my God. So, with that said, everybody's fully warned. This is going to be a very hard-hitting episode. So, let's dive into it. So, the comic itself, like John said, is black and white mostly, and I think it's like drawn maybe with charcoal.
It's like it looked like charcoal, different maybe
charcoal pens or pencils or yeah, because it might have been two-tone on some areas, like if there was like a copper-colored charcoal or something, but like a brownish charcoal. But so it's like black and white for the most part, and there's basically there's no dialogue in this book. There's no bubbles of talking or anything except one thing I can think of. But other than that, it's all based on the manuscript or the book that was put out from this, which is called The Confessions of Nat Turner, which was after he was captured, what he told everybody before he was put to death. So,
all throughout, it's really amazing imagery, and the only thing I think we ever get really, for the most part, in words that's not like excerpts from this are sound effects. Sometimes they're emphasizing.
Well, there's that the one time, and we'll get to this later, but his dad escaped and he yells out.
That's right.
Run, daddy, run. So, so the beginning, the comic opens, and we're in Africa, and it's only a 4-issue comic, I believe, so, or maybe 3. I think it's 4, but it's in 4 parts, and the first part's called Home. And so it starts off in Africa, and there's like, kids playing, and I don't know if this is what village this is. It doesn't say place names or anything. So it's just in Africa. I'm not sure where. And it's like a village. Everybody's happy, doing their normal stuff daily. And then you see their faces look up all of a sudden, and you see men on horseback coming at them with rifles. And they don't have rifles or anything. The local people don't have, or the village people don't have anything other than, they don't show them grab any weapons that I saw, but it, like, in the back it said they didn't have anything but spears and whatnot. So it was like, okay, guns versus spears. Obviously, this is a bad outcome for the villagers. So there's specifically one of the main characters in the panel was a woman, and she takes off with a kid, and she's running, and people are dying all around her, getting shot and whatnot, and she runs into the jungle. She hides the kid, and then she's running. They're chasing her. The kid is safe as far as we know, but then so she's running, and she comes to a cliff.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
And she comes to the cliff, and you can see it in her eyes. She's like, "Do I jump to my death, or do I get captured by these people?" And I'm sure they don't say it in the comment, but I'm sure this ain't the first time someone's come to, catch people for slavery around this area. So I'm sure stories have been told that this is going to happen possibly, or this happened over there. So people know what their fate's going to be, that they're going to at least be taken out of Africa. Maybe not. They don't know exactly what's going to happen on the other side of the world, but they know it ain't good when
there are people coming to try to take them.
So she's, she gets to this edge of this cliff and is like, jump to death, or, see what happens if I get captured. And she's like, I'm going to jump to my death. So she jumps, and one of the guys just happens to be awesome at lassoing, apparently, and throws a lasso and catches her foot.
Oh my gosh.
So then she's captured. And that was like the first 2 pages of the book. I'm like, oh my God, like, this is going to be heavy. So it's like, and just Kyle Baker's artwork when he shows, like, you don't need words, like that's one of the things that you think, like, in the 70s, or 60s, when Jack Kirby's got his artwork, and he could, you could probably much follow everything, but then Stanley's got to put like 50 word balloons and, narrator balloons and all that stuff over everything. So you understand this was like, nah. Like, you just look at her eyes, and Kyle Baker drew them, so you knew exactly what she was thinking, and what was going on in her mind. So she gets captured, and they show like what that entails as far as
lining them all up, putting them in chains, but the branding and oh my gosh.
History lesson, in case anybody doesn't know, but this book was a big history lesson, just covering all bases as far as even what slavery was like, when they first got captured and whatnot. It said that they, I think, because there was little excerpts that, would say like this happened. It was like from a book from back then, or from the word of a captain, of a slaver ship captain, what they would do before. And it would have a little quotation on the bottom of the page. And it would say, we got all the men and women, stripped them naked, cut their hair, and then, or like shaved their heads clean, and then branded any of the ones if there was more than one buyer for the whole ship. So if there's got 4 buyers, for all the people on the ship, they had to have, each one of them had to have a brand so that they would know. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is like cattle or some shit. This is super fun. I mean, not that we didn't know this. Obviously, we already knew slavery, right? We knew this thing. But the way that it's told in this book, it's just extra hard hitting, when you're actually looking at the pictures and all that stuff.
Well, yeah, because when you think back when we learned a lot about this in grade school, like, we were taught about slavery and how horrible it was.
Right.
But they just, it's not something that they go as hard in depth into. And it's uncomfortable. I get that, but you need to have those kind of discussions. And,
right.
And this is like, it's right in your.
I wish we read this kind of stuff in.
I did too.
High school. This would have been like, okay, I'm actually learning something, and this is like powerful and meaningful, and but whatever. Instead, I learned what King George did or whatever. So, but yeah. So, then it shows her on the ship. And she, like, I don't know if you saw in the back. Did you go all the way through the? Mm-hmm. So we read this digitally, by the way. We didn't have the hardcover or the soft cover of it. So in the back of that, there was like a diagram of the ships and how they were like how they stacked the people for voyage, and like the whole bottom of the ship was just like there was no room in between bodies. It was just like person. Like, like if you were putting matchsticks together, sideways, it was like, that's bodies. There's no room in between. We're treating them like cargo that is valued on how much we can stack in here, So it shows her, and she was like crammed in between two people, of course, and she was on the upper decks or the upper storage areas, and she had like there's rats all over the place, and the lady next to her, or the person next to her, is dead.
Yeah,
and like I mean, and we're talking like obviously the comic, and there was another thing. Kyle Baker does such a good job. Instead of putting like a month later in little text or whatever, he would just show pictures of the moon. So you're like, oh, it's been a month because there's the new moon, the waning moon, like or the full moon, the waning moon, and then no moon.
Yeah,
so
that was cool.
I was like, okay, so it's been a month, and then so each one of these was like a month in between. Oh yeah, we skipped over a part that's really important. When they capture her, they're not like on the coast, so they like have to do basically a death march in chains. What'd you say it was like?
Yeah, that was one of they have so as we're reading it, we're seeing all these things, and in the back they kind of have these little points they bring to is that like they weren't anywhere near the coast, so they had to do like 1,000-mile march on foot to the coast,
right?
And they were talking like the statistics were 2 out of every 5 captured did not survive just the journey to the coast, and then from there a lot died on the ships.
Yeah,
and
you said it was like a third and then a third, right?
Yeah,
it was like a third died on the walk, on the death march to the coast, and then another third died on the ship itself. So, and then they also show like a baby being born on the ship, and this so a baby's born, and they show it, and it's like, yeah, that's around the baby isn't exactly clean or anything. So, and then so they get to America. I assume it's America, but might be one of the islands off of America. I'm not sure, like in the Bahamas or something.
Yeah.
And then they're going to be, or they're like getting off the ship, and the lady with the baby still has the baby, and she's like, she sees a boy being whipped, like another slave being whipped, but it's a boy, and she like realizes this baby's going to be that kid someday. I don't want the kid living in that. And so she throws the baby into she runs out of line and then throws the baby into the ocean.
And one of the things is they showed pictures of sharks following the boat several times in some images. And apparently this is one of those things because of all the people that died, all these slaves that died on the ships as they go, they would throw them overboard after so time, and that brought sharks around. So they would have sharks follow these ships.
That's how many dead people there were on the way to America. Is sharks would follow because they're like, hey, it's a free meal every couple of days or every day or whatever. Yeah. Crazy. That's crazy. And I mean, you think like going to America, I don't know how long it took, probably a month, if not months and months, 3 or 4 months. So yeah. Anyway, so she throws that baby into, and Kyle Baker draws it probably for emphasis, but also not, exaggerating that much, is a shark literally going to eat that baby. So, so you get that right away. That's what it is. And then they just bring them to be sold.
Yeah.
So, and then I think that's the end of the first.
Well, just on to know that they show them catching the baby too.
Oh yeah.
But then she
one of the white guys that's on the ship, the slaver ship, he like catches the baby by the foot, and then the mom bites his arm and makes him drop it. And so that's why the baby ends up fully going in the water.
But yeah, it was just intense to see like they're at any means they're gonna like keep every single one of these that they can.
Right. And then so I can't remember if this was like in the next part or if this is still this part of it, but so that's basically the lady that we've been following is Nat Turner's mom. And so she, when she's brought to she goes to the farm she's a slave at, and then I don't know if she's given a husband or I'm sure they weren't like able to pick
yeah.
who, so they're like, okay, we're given you're now, she's your wife, other slave, and so she has a kid, and that's Nat Turner, and yeah, so I think that's like where the break is like, I don't know if it shows him as a little boy at first there, or if it's
not really. Yeah, it's yeah. I could. It was hard to tell. I don't know if it was like just given and set up, or if it was maybe there was some kind of natural coming togetherness because they're all slaves together.
right.
Yeah, that
I can't imagine they are, a slave masters allowing that. So
yeah.
I mean, like even in the back of the book, it said Kyle did I don't know, it might have been in the foreword. Kyle Baker wrote, like, it was always seemed weird that that like they were people were breeding, stock, or like, people for doing work, so they wanted like the strongest and best, children, so that way that they would grow up and be good workers. So I'm assuming that they're breeding them like, okay, you're a strong guy, you seem like a fine woman as far as like breeding stock, and then now you two are married, so says I, the master of this house, or whatever. So super fucked up. Yeah. So but they didn't go into that as far as in this comic. So
no, the only last part of that one is that they show Slave later on, he has a little drum that he beats on later, and he's like trying to communicate with somebody.
I think that was his grandpa.
Okay.
I think so. I might be wrong. It might have just been another slave person.
Well, he was beating on the drum, and they came and they the slave owners came and ripped the drum away and took him to an area, kind of publicly whip him in front of the other slaves, and then they
cut off his hands.
So he could drum anymore. And then it showed there was a word showed salt, and they rubbed salt all in his wounds.
Mm-hmm. It was it was
so
disgusting.
intense.
Yeah, it was intense. It was like, once again, this isn't like a graphically bloody comic or anything, but he shows, them putting his hands on the stump, chained up, and then, the guy with the axe is next to the stump, and then the next shot is his hands by themselves on the ground. So, I mean, it's not like showing viscera and gross stuff, but it's like, no, this happened, and this is messed up, and you're looking at it, in the least bloody way I can show you, but it's like, it's there. I'm not trying to hide anything, kind of thing. So, and I read in the back, you said there was those points that they talked about. It said, I thought the old man was like praying or something, maybe with the drum, and because he was looking up in the sky and stuff. But apparently that's how they used to communicate. And he might have been praying, and they might have been trying to communicate like to one of their gods or something. But that's what he was trying. I guess he would do that every night or something, or every couple of nights. He had to go out into the woods and sneak it. So he got caught doing that. So, yeah. Sorry, that street sweeper came by, so kind of ruined the sound there for a second, but
everything's good now. Although we do have our dogs acting crazy in the background too, so you might hear them.
So don't mind any jingling or barking you might hear. So, anyway, so back to where we were at with Nat Turner. So you want to take this part, the education part?
So this is where we really get introduced to Nat now. He basically he starts being interested in figuring out how to read. Like
first they introduce like he's a kid, right? He's a kid now, and he's like, he even says like, oh, I was like super smart for a kid and whatnot.
Very inquisitive.
Yeah, inquisitive. So
yeah, and so he is in the house. He's in the house, right? When he sees the other kids start like learning.
He's stuff somewhere. Yeah, there's like, it shows like kids learning in a room. I don't know if it wouldn't be a school room that he would be by, but it might be inside. It must be.
Yeah,
inside
I thought
house.
Maybe he was obviously.
And they're learning like ABC on a chalkboard, and then the door closes in his face.
Yeah, but he puts his ear up to the door and he's listening and picking up some of that. Basically he's in the house to he's serving in the house. And
right, as a little kid.
As a kid, because he can't be out in the fields.
Right.
And so he's doing this, and he's basically trying to learn how to spell words. He has a Bible.
Yeah, like he finds a Bible in the house and he picks it up and he starts reading it.
Yeah, he tries to sound out and spell out words.
Yeah, and even in his confession, he said like I don't even remember learning an alphabet. I just knew it, and then I just knew how to read basically. And in the comic, it shows him like pick up the Bible, and he automatically like starts seeing the stories like Moses and Abraham and all that stuff like from the Old Testament, because that's like the section he's looking at. And then one of the masters comes by.
Yeah, and sees him with the book, and he immediately he turns the book upside down and immediately acts ignorant to what he has, and like, I don't know how to read. I don't know what I've got.
I don't even know this is a book. This is like, it might as well be a block of wood. I don't know what it is.
And Kyle Baker made a very specific point to make this. There's a couple panels of him like this where he's hiding the fact that he's learning and doing these things. And he makes it very much like an old stereotypical looking, like a minstrel kind of character,
like a drawing, a caricature that they would show in like a newspaper of a black person or something. And then the white guy's like, haha, look at him. Or whatever,
he's like, oh, okay, yeah, just basically to make it seem like, oh, okay, I don't need to worry about this kid. But by going through this, then he starts to actually read and comprehend the Bible, and he starts to grow faith to it, and basically starts telling it to other slaves.
Well, but before that, because that's like after he shows him grow up
a little bit.
So, but before that, like he was sleeping later that night, or at least around that time when he was a kid, and he wakes up to his dad having run away and escaped. And he hears all the slave owners, and
the dogs,
all the dogs and everything trying to catch him. And instead of being like, what are they, feeling bad or whatever, he just runs outside. And this is pretty much the only spoken words in the comic. He says, "Run, Daddy, run." He yells it real loud. It's a really poignant move, part of the book. That's all he cared about, was that his dad got away. And so then it shows him grow up after he gets the Bible and he starts, reading it more, and he starts believing it, but believing it like he's special. He starts being like, I've got a vision from God. God speaks to me like I'm a prophet or something, or I have something with my life that I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna be like Moses or something, or one of those kind of people, because he's reading those stories about slavery and in the with the Jews in Egypt and stuff, and it's it's obvious in those, at least, that being a slave is bad, so they don't want to do that. So he's reading that and he's seeing parallels in his life and whatnot. So and then eventually when he's grown up, he starts, and it shows him when he's a kid going into the woods, and apparently these were underground church services because they're in the woods, so I'm assuming they're hidden from the slave masters. So it's they're having to go secretly have these churches, I guess, or gatherings for church. And then but then when he does it, he's like we will, the slave or the first will become the last, and the last will become the first, and we're gonna rise up. And he's taking a lot of the slavery freedom images from the Bible to mean that's what we're gonna do.
This is what we're gonna do.
Yeah. And and one thing we forgot to mention is earlier on, before his dad was escaped, he and this was cool that they mentioned this, is that he's in the field, his dad's in the field working, and it shows him singing, and he's singing to another guy in the field, and then you see them kind of sing back to each other, and then it shows pictures of someone who found a book and then got whipped because they had a book, and then they're then kind of back to the field. And so it's kind of I didn't know this, but apparently that's where a lot of hymnals or slave hymns came out of. They can actually communicate it by song. It would say, they'd be like back in River Jordan, and they would be talking about the Mississippi or something. Like they would convey things they couldn't talk about in front of the white slave owners.
Yeah, through the songs,
which I didn't know. I thought they were just singing hymnals to like get through the shitty day. So
yeah, that was very interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, so it said that in one of the points.
The points afterwards.
That they would sing. They would actually sing those like gospel songs to each other, and it meant other things than what they were necessarily talking about. So, and they kind of like, it's weird because like one of the few things the white people would probably be okay with would be, the Bible or like churches, kind of thing, or like religious, like, oh, the slave person's getting religious, and then make sure that they, learn that the parts of the Bible that say like, slaves should obey their masters and all that kind of stuff over the, let my people go stuff. So, yeah, you get that, but then he's becoming more militant and starting to believe like he's chosen to do something great, and that something great is going to be freeing people by force. So he comes up with a plan, and the plan was originally like it says like I was waiting for like a sign from God, and then an eclipse happened. And then he waited, and he's like, make sure that's correct. And then apparently there was another eclipse or something else happened to also give him a sign. So he was like, okay, this plan is ordained by God or whatever.
Yeah.
So, or it's okayed by God. So then he told 3 other people that were like his close slave friends or people that he knew at least.
Yeah.
That he trusted. And then they were like, yeah, we're cool with this plan. So that was like on the 4th of July, I think, is when he came up with the plan. And then it took till August. What was the day of the? I think it was August 21st.
Well, I know May 12th is the
August 21st, 1831 is when the I don't know what you call uprising happened.
Uprising, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, May is when he ran away first too. There.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah. So part of him like having that sign was him running away, and it was the parallels. He ran away for 30 days in the woods, and
and then he came back,
and then he came back. But then I thought was odd and interesting too. It's like he came back, but he was saying like, oh, I found, like he was saying basically like I found Jesus, or
I think what it was so in the story of Moses, he like runs away for 30 years or something like that, and then comes back to Egypt. He's called by God to come back to Egypt and free the people. So I think that's kind of like.
But they didn't like whip him or anything. At least in
the comic, I'm sure there was punishment. I don't know what it would be, but yeah, I think, or maybe not. Maybe because he came back on his own. I don't know. They didn't capture him.
Maybe, but then they showed like him and the female partner that he was with there too.
Yeah,
they kind of ripped them apart.
Oh, that's right. No, they have kids. So yeah, that's what they. I think maybe that's what they did to punish him was they
ripped
his family. So he came back, and then I think probably because he had kids and a wife too, and then they sold his wife and kids. So yeah,
and that's basically where he really had his like his coming to God moment. He said that he had basically had God speak to him at that moment, and he had a vision where he saw white and black spirits in a battle in the rain. That was actually, I remember now that this panel was one of my favorites in the whole comic here, because it's him talking about how he saw like this great fight happening, and it's him standing and like screaming in the rain.
Oh yeah,
and you could see every drop of rain in this panel, and you could just see the emotion on his face.
Yeah, and it was just like him being
powerful.
like, I'm done. Like it's like, there's movies like Falling Down or The Joker or whatever, where it's like these people reach a breaking point. And I mean, I'm surprised he didn't reach a breaking point earlier, but that's like all he knew was slavery. So this was like an even more thing where they sold his kids and his wife that like pushed him over the edge.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, so he's basically like, fuck this.
Yeah.
I'm this is my destiny. I'm called by God. I'm going to come up with a plan and, by any means necessary, free myself and everyone else kind of thing. And so is that where it leaves it?
That's where, because so on May 12th, that's when he sees the spirit come to him, and it says that the Lord saying that the serpent was let loose, and he should take to fight with the serpent. Like that's like his.
Yeah. Well, and he was telling that to, wasn't he like telling that to a crowd of like a congregation of people in the woods? So like, yeah, he's telling the other slaves like we should fight basically and rise up. And like he had a vision from God, and this is and you should believe it, kind of thing. So, then I think it breaks there, right? Like that's where the break is. So then the break would be, I don't remember what the third chapter was called. Do you remember what it was called?
Like conflict,
something like I think it was, yeah. But that's basically when it happens. So the rebellion, they call it the slave rebellion, happened on August 21st, 1831. And this is all taking place in Southampton County, Virginia. So just for reference. And basically like him and his 4 friends, they wake up late at night. Not super late, I don't think, but late enough that everybody's asleep in the house. They go to the house and
they have like just their things that they worked with in the field.
Yeah,
like
so you got like an axe for like cutting wood, clubs, or, maybe like farming equipment, like a rake or a scythe or something.
Yeah, he kind of had like it looked like I think it was a sword-esque, but I think it was just like a scythe.
Like a reaping knife or something.
Yeah.
And it might have been like a slaughter knife or something.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. And so then they sneak into the house so they don't wake anybody, and it says he took the first blow, but it was dark and he didn't quite hit his master in the right spot. So his friend had to like finish the master off, and then they killed the wife that was in the same bed. Then they killed the kids and everybody else in the house. And then they walked out, and they had traveled a little bit further away from the house, and they were going to the next house, and they realized, oh, there was a baby in that house. And they sat there and kind of were like debating, like, do we kill the baby too? Like, how far are we taking this kind of thing? And then Nat Turner remembers the story his mom told him about the woman who had to throw her baby in the water so that it wouldn't be a slave, or so that they wouldn't be a slave. And he's like, you know what? Let's kill the babies. Because if you think about it, like that, in their mind, that person's going to grow up, have probably a chip on their shoulder about slaves, and treat them worse than
they already come from a slave-owning family, so they're. Yeah. I mean, there's no sign of ending slavery, so they're going to own slaves themselves.
In my mind, there's nothing to morally call them out on, because it's like they're slaves. They had their whole lives taken away. If you were in that situation, you would literally kill everything and everyone to get out of it.
To get away. Yeah.
So I don't hold any moral judgment on any of these people and what they were doing, because the whole system in that area is just trying to capture them. It's kind of like in New Frontier, which we haven't read yet, but there's a scene where one of the characters who's black is in the 50s. He's running away, and he's like trying to hide, and a little white girl comes out, and he thinks like, oh, okay, shh, like be quiet, and she's like, he's over here. And it's like, even little kids are dangerous, you know what I mean? Or like even like in wartime, you have little kids with bombs on them that walk up to you and stuff. So like in Rambo, like that's true. Kind of thing. So it's like, you can't, just because they're kids or women or what, you can't say they're not going to end up being, your death, because they could call out, they could get a whole other team of people or slave owners that, warn them or whatever. So, I mean, the baby, it's not going to do that, but future, they're talking, think about the future kind of thing.
And, because that baby's going to grow up knowing that, like my family was killed by slaves.
And not only that, I mean, he's thinking biblically. Like, in his mind, God literally killed the firstborn of every family in Egypt because they wouldn't let his people go.
Yeah.
So in his mind, he is the angel of death in this, scenario. He's like, this is God's will. I am God's instrument, and I will, lay my wrath upon thee. I wouldn't be surprised if he started saying that speech from Pulp Fiction. But yeah, like it was Ezekiel 29:17 or whatever. But yeah, like literally he thinks he's God's hand, here. So he has no qualms about that. So they go house to house to house.
Yep. They take guns from the...
Yeah, every time they ransack for like money and guns and anything that can help them as they're escaped or freed. And then also they gather the slaves from that property.
Yeah. They say, hey, we're setting you guys free. Come with us.
So they just keep walking down. I don't know if it's the same street or if it's a long street or which. It seemed like it was like, oh, it's the same street. They just keep walking down to each house kind of thing. And they got about 60 people. And there were some slaves that didn't go with them, that actually warned the white town folk that like, hey, there's slaves and they're uprising. And so there was specifically 2 characters in this book that they didn't have names or anything, but they ran. They were the ones that were going telling the white people that these slaves were rising up. And so, we forgot to mention the opening of this chapter was a little white boy's playing in the front of the house, and there's like a slave with chopping wood, and the white boy like looks at him and smiles and waves, and the slave smiles and waves as he has to, and then
when they
get to that guy's house, they kill the family, and the little boy runs out and sees him, and he's like, "Hey, little kid," and he just same with the accident. It was almost like a shot for shot or like a panel for panel.
Yeah,
but then he kills that kid.
Yeah, he chops the kid in his head.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, like the kid, his whole family's forcing me to be here, under threat of death. So, yeah.
One of the other interesting things I thought going with it is that every time he went to kill somebody, Nat Turner,
yeah,
he never really made like whatever he was using, whether he used a new thing or not, like he never made like a killing blow. He would hit somebody and like it didn't like go. Like there was one he hit somebody with a sword and it was
too dull,
yeah. And so then the guy behind him came and like hit
I didn't notice that. Maybe he was saying something about that, but I didn't notice there was like something said other than oh, this happened, but I didn't put 2 and 2 together. Like it means something.
Well, one of them he did hit in the head afterwards with a
I thought he like crushed her face or her head with a pole or like it
was a piece of
club.
fence. Yeah.
So, but yeah, so eventually they get caught by like a whole bunch of white people with guns. I don't know if they're the actual they're not the slave owners that were killed, obviously, but I don't know if they're other slave owners or if they're just town people.
Like worried.
But like, town people at this time are like, slavery is fine. So they're like, that shouldn't happen. And they rise up to meet them with like a little militia, and they just start shooting everybody.
Right before that happened, I forgot there was a panel I really liked too. After they'd gathered the people and it was showing them like, as they were gathering, it was like right as they were getting to the large number, one of the panels showed like little tiny action shot, like squares, and then little bits of the confession of Nat Turner, like, like we did this here and we did that there, and they're just like little blurby action shots. It was really cool.
And his confession was like an actual like confession where he's like, then we murdered these people, and then we murdered these people, and then we murdered these people. So it was very like, it wasn't like he was trying to hide any of this. Like I said, he thought and he believed, I am like the hand of God right now. I am like the angel of death, and I am doing what I was told to do by God. So he doesn't have any qualms about this. He knows he's going to die anyway. That's why he's doing this confession. But he gets away initially from the original battle or the original skirmish with the white guys, but then he gives himself up after like a certain amount of time. What I think it's like a couple days or 30 days. I'm not sure.
It was just a couple days.
Okay, yeah. So he gives himself up, and then he's giving this confession to
Thomas R. Gray.
Okay. Yeah, and that dude's like, he's hearing this story like straight from Nat Turner, and he said like my blood was curdled by the horrible savagery of this or whatever.
Yeah, he said like he like looked in his eyes and like they were just stone cold. Like he didn't show any emotion,
right?
And he was like It was interesting to see his account of this, him being a white man listening to like what he just thinks as of murders, and being like, oh, this person doesn't have a soul, whereas he was doing it to free.
Right. But also they don't have any problem with what they do every day to these people.
Yeah.
Because they don't consider them people. So, yeah, it's like, how could this monster blah, blah, blah. And it's like, how can you be a monster every day? But anyway, so he gave this confession.
They killed 55 people.
Yeah, they killed 55 people total. And no one was spared. And basically what came from this was a bunch of laws that were like, slaves can't read or learn to read at all, which was already kind of a law, I think. And then for sure, like if slaves meet at like a church, they have to have a white minister or someone white there to like oversee what's going on.
And the drumming was outlawed. There was the Mississippi Black Codes. They outlawed drumming because they figured out it was for communication.
Yeah. So they did a lot of stuff like that to try to quell this. But a little thing happened in the meantime. So, and like after he gave this confession, basically they hung him like right away. And, but it was interesting when he got hung, he didn't move or jerk or anything. And like everybody that came there to be like, yeah, hang him, they were like super scared or like, haunted by the way that he died. Cause he just basically stone looked at them while he was, strangled to death by the rope and didn't move,
didn't like shake
or like show any trying to get out of it or anything. He just stared them down and they're like, what the fuck? Like this guy is hardcore.
Yeah.
So
one of that questions, like after he gave the confession, Gray asked him, he said, do you not find, basically what you've done is bad? Are you not mistaken in what you've done?
Yeah.
And he said, all he said was Christ not crucified?
Yeah. So basically he was
yeah.
like, I'm a Christ figure. Like, yeah. I am freeing people and you are the ones who are, the Judases and the, Pharisees and all that stuff. So, yeah, he hangs, and then what happens afterwards, and this is I love this part of the book. So you're kind of like, I wonder how far this book's going to go further, because then the next section is called Triumph, and you're like, oh, I wonder what happens. And basically, it's just the printing press happens, and when the printing press happens, they're like, oh, we're going to print his confession in a book, so that all these white people can read it and be like, how horrible was this black person? But what ended up happening is a bunch of slaves got their hands on that book and read it, and then it made them it emboldened them to want to be free. So, not that there was another uprising, but I think by the time everybody had read this and whatnot, everybody heard about it. He's probably like a folk hero, around the circles. And then when the Civil War happens, they're like, yes, now we have a reason to rise up. Let's take advantage of this kind of thing. So, yeah. So that was Nat Turner. That was an amazing story. That no one tells anybody about in history class.
Yeah, had I learned that in school, I definitely would have had a deeper
understanding of it. Yeah.
Yeah, because they show some things and you
can only get so much of a feel for yes, you could say, oh, I know what slavery is, but you don't know what slavery is unless you've been a slave. And sometimes you need to see things like Roots or things like, that really show you how horrible it is. Just like World War II movies or something. Like, what does a concentration camp look like? And then they show you the video of it, and you're like, holy shit. And unfortunately, there was no video of this stuff because it was too early.
Yeah.
But, things like this help you understand that, because they're all taken from either first account sources like Nat Turner himself, and the Kyle Baker's book had a bunch of, sources and everything for all this stuff. And a lot of them were firsthand sources. Like a lot of them were then the colonel who was the captain of that vessel talking about slave ships, or so it wasn't like 40 people were moved or something. So yeah, with that being said, what would you give this book, John?
It made me like reflect. It definitely gave me some like important reminders, and like just to keep things in context and really remember these horrible atrocities that you just don't think about in your day-to-day life.
Yeah. Like, this is one I'd be like, hey, if you have a kid or anything, you give it to them. Oh, hold on. We got someone at the door. Hold on a second.
So, yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry about that. The doorbell got rung. So anyway,
it was really impactful, and it was a really good read, and I'm really glad that we're doing this. Overall, the art was really cool. It was definitely the first one I've seen that we've done that had like that charcoal kind of style.
Yeah.
And I liked that it was impactful with its imagery and didn't necessarily, like, we got parts of the confession like interwoven, but a lot of it was physically seeing the story driven.
Yeah.
So I would probably give this, I would say an 8.
An 8?
Maybe a 9.
I'm going to give this one a 9. Actually, you know what? I'm going to give this one a 10. Because I've already read this before, and it was just as hard-hitting. And, like, it pushes the medium further.
Okay.
And it's really well done. And, like, this is stuff that they should be reading in schools. Like, this should be what they give to, a college class or whatever, and then people should go, I didn't know comics could do this. So that's what should be, like, that's my 10, is a book you could give to a college class or a high school class, and you're like, wow, I didn't know comics could do this. So, and then it changes the whole perspective of whoever reads it. Like, I don't know anybody who read this that would be like, what?
Yeah.
Most people don't know who Nat Turner is anyway, so it'd be interesting to give this book to people and be like, yeah. So this book's a 10 for me. But do you want an 8? Do you want a 9?
I was saying, I was leaning towards 9, and then you're saying that, and it's like, it's
sorry about the dogs barking.
Oh my
in the
goodness
background.
gracious.
Anyway,
I would say it's a 9, just because for me it was, like I said, it was impactful. It was very intense. It was very eye-opening to see this whole story flesh out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, knowing the story now, like, I don't know, like, it would take me a while to try to sit down and read it again, because it was so wild.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I mean, like, to me, a book that's like a 10 is something that, 1, stays like poignant even after you read it, and then 2, you could give it to anybody.
I'm not bending to your will.
No. I'm just saying this is why I picked 10. That's why I picked a 10. So, because you give it to anybody, and it would then also be poignant to pretty much anybody, and then you could do it at like a college class or something. So that's like,
yes. Well, see, Matt and I's grading systems are different. Matt is very formulated with his, and mine, I'm very like carefree. Just kind of like, oh yeah, I liked it. And
all right, cool.
But I really did enjoy this one.
Yeah.
So
I don't mean anything by it. Anyway, yeah. So I guess that wraps this one up, and the next time we're going to be doing a little Batman story by Dwayne McDuffie, like we said, called Blink. So stick around for that one.
Yeah.
And not happy Black History Month, but I guess, celebrate
Black History Month.
History.
Yeah, reach out, look for something new this year, and like, not the same stories you hear all over and over again.
Yep. Sounds like a plan.
All right. See you next time.
Have a good one. Bye. Well, folks, hope you enjoyed that episode.
If you did, and you'd like to follow us on social media, our Facebook is Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, and our Instagram is @Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, all one word.
And be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more recommendations to add to your weekly pull list.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.